All right, we'll call the meeting here at 9:06, 8:06, excuse me. I haven't had enough coffee yet today. I'm sorry. Does not appear to be any public comments, so we can hop right into the action items here. Good morning.
Good morning. The donation memo, you do have a revised one, the one that came out on Friday night. We have a large donation from the Student Advancement Foundation to support several different of our programs. So they're going to help us with funding of arts and physical wellness, environmental education, math, science, technology, enrichment opportunities, libraries and laptop computer access, and the Principal Student Support Fund. And the details we're following for $232,350. In addition, this is the one that we are adding this morning, and it's from W.K. Kellogg Foundation, and that's continued support of our work with the National Equity Project on leadership development and coaching strategies, in the amount of $553,000. So the business office recommends that we accept these.
Is there a motion to approve these donations? And then we can open the floor for discussion.
Motion.
Support.
All right. Is there any discussion?
Just briefly, the first donation amount, that's essentially the large annual support
Yes.
we get from Student Aid, from Student Advancement Foundation. How does that compare year over year? It's about the same as?
I think it's about the same, and Michelle is working really hard at trying to increase what they are able to do for us, so.
Everybody, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But it's for essentially the same categories, so this is continuing support for the same things that they've supported in the past, right?
Yes.
Okay. Then are we only moving on that one item then, or on both of them?
On both items at this moment. There's a discussion about the other one as well.
I don't know if anyone else has any questions about the first one, I assume not.
Well, yeah. So in the uniform closet, can you explain that a little bit? Is that,
They had collected about $13,000 to help us implement the uniform policy. All of that money has actually been expended. So now they're looking at, as we move into cold weather, what else can we do type thing. So at this point, they've expended what the $13,000 they had collected for the sole purpose of uniforms. So we'll probably have to look at some other options as we move into the cold weather.
so what does that mean? So if there's a need among schools,
Right.
they're able to come to you guys and say, hey,
They were going to, to the Student
Okay.
Advancement Foundation, and Student Advancement Foundation was giving them uniforms to distribute to children.
okay.
So there were, I don't know if we were talking, might be, this was prior to you being on the board, was the actual number of students that we have that are compliant with our uniform policy is extremely high for a first year. But there are still kids that end up coming to school without uniforms, so then they are supplemented with uniforms. And then the part about it being cold, just meaning that sweaters or
Yeah, right.
other
The
pieces
long
are-
sleeves
yeah,
and,
going to be in addition. And any possibility of working with In the Image or somebody else in terms of local donor groups, or in terms of, I mean, they do shoe support, but jackets, or I know we often have sort of a coat handing out as well. This principal fund is a bigger thing. The Principal Student Support Fund, they help, it's sort of a discretionary fund they started
Right.
last year or 2 years ago, just trying to fill a lot of
2 years
people in about some of this stuff. And so that's so a child doesn't have an adequate place to sleep or something like that. These principals are now able to do some implementation of stuff that they haven't been able to help kids with previously. Help them with their being a student when they're at school. Did you want to add any more, Teresa?
I'd
or-
like to add that about the second day of school, we had approximately 50 families that were not able to purchase uniforms, and so we used dollars for that. Each of the principals, they have about 3 or 4 uniforms, at their school in case children have accidents or whatever that is. So we just keep the fund going so that principals can have a closet of uniforms. Does that make sense, Reverend Matias?
Yeah, thank
Any
you.
additional questions about the Student Advancement Foundation dollars? Not?
No.
Move on to the W.K. Kellogg Foundation dollars, if there's any questions about those.
Yeah, of course, we're never going to say no to money, but does that, I notice that we've got a contract in front of us essentially that flows through from this for substantially less money. Does that mean that Kellogg is essentially going to be underwriting multi-year stuff here?
Right, actually, most of what you're seeing right now is, as they gave us money 3 years ago, it's been, and so it's kind of been an ongoing, their commitment was actually, this is about half of it, so we're asking for the balance of it, so we can continue our work with the National Equity Project and others.
Is there any money that comes out of any other sources for this, or is this national equity thing entirely funded by Kellogg dollars?
It is entirely funded by Kellogg dollars, but that's a great question, Mr. LeGrand. When this project actually started about 3 years ago, it originally came to the board for $900,000, and when I took this seat, I wanted to first find out if that was where we should continue our effort. And so, although the board, you all had seen the $900,000, we thought we would do it in chunks, because we wanted to see if it really brought the value to the table that we had hoped it would. And it did. So we took the $350,000 for the board to approve in January of 2012 when I took this position, and then we thought we would just continue on if in fact we saw the value. So
Great, thanks.
No other questions? Other questions?
And just clarification, so the value in terms of leadership development, you guys have found helpful?
Absolutely. National Equity, they've been at the table. They started in about 2010. And we just weren't sure of the best way to include them in our academic plan. And since then, we've worked very closely with them as partners, they are helping us to see some of our process that we have, as well as policies. How are we adding to the problem of the low failure rate? One process that we're looking at right now is our suspensions and suspensions, expulsions, and attendance. And so how are we adding to that? So they've been extremely helpful. We are also going to work with them on a couple of other projects that you will see later, and it is around OCR. That is not a part of this, but OCR. But those are the 3 specific projects that they're working with us, as well as leadership development. They are also helping us with the Ottawa Hills project.
Meaning
The governance
college.
board around in the
okay.
college. Mhm.
I did have one more follow-up
Go ahead.
question. It's talking about, National Equity Project, but it mostly talks about engaging African-American students when, we've got 30+% Hispanic population in the district as well. And I feel like either they need to reword how they talk about this, they actually need to implement better in terms of what we're doing to help improve Hispanic education or reaching out to children. But I think it only sort of talks to, and I understand if we're going to go into suspensions, expulsions, and we're getting dinged by the state for having African Americans have a higher number and disproportionate and all of that. But if we don't have language in here, then we're really never going to actually address adequately Hispanic needs.
That's great. So there's 2 things. One, they're helping with the entire district, and it is bringing about equity across the entire district for every race.
Right.
The other specifically is around African-American males, and that is because of our suspension
Yep.
rates and the OCR issues with the state of Michigan. And then the other is because that's one specific strategy that is in my evaluation. That's why. Great question. But otherwise, they're really working across the entire district.
Okay.
Can I ask a question for clarification, John? We're not voting today on whether to approve this contract, right? We're just voting.
We're voting to accept the
receive pilot
donation.
loan.
The donation, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Is there going to be a point at which we're going to
There,
revisit?
in the purchasing agenda, there are two items related to the National Equity Project, one funded through BOE dollars and one funded through the Kellogg Foundation dollars.
Great.
But the two things, but the actual proposal is not something that I would normally bring to the board to vote on, but if you would like to weigh in, then you wouldn't see it through this process. So I just want to make sure that you understand that it's,
Okay, so I can,
The dollars are still not adding up in my head here. The donation is for $553,000. The contract that's in front of us is for $301,375. And in the purchasing agenda later on, the purchasing amount is for $350,000.
Right.
So there's some large swings in dollars that aren't really, and then we have a BOE purchase from our own pool of money for $64,000.
okay, so let me,
Oh,
if
can
you
you-
go, yes, I can, absolutely. If you go back to a few years ago, under the previous superintendent, it was for $900,000. And so we spent part of the money, and then we had a carryover amount. So part of what you see is carryover, and then the new money.
So we never accepted the full amount from Kellogg previously?
I think you guys did prior to me sitting in this seat.
Right. That's why I'm trying to, I remember all this,
Do you?
but I'm just trying to figure out.
All of it equals $900,000, John. So what I was doing is showing how we are spending the $900,000, going back to what you already approved.
But what was the previous, and I guess I should go back and look at the January.
I think we were trying to clarify and we weren't sure if
What is the-
whole 900,000 actually came as a donation.
Right.
So that's why we are adding the 500,000 now, thinking, well, we probably only took what we were accepting back then, the 3 years ago. I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of what was going on.
You know, if you don't mind, I mean,
I think I do recall
It's
that
not that I don't-
happening, and that there was sort of a step back in saying.
It was, because,
That's
and that's
little
why, originally, the
100,000.
amount came to you, but I think it came to you after, I don't know how it came to you, but the $900,000. It was
simultaneous.
messy, the $900,000.
I think that was January 2012.
Yes.
Well, January 2012 was in fact the 300, because I did that. But you had already had discussions around the $900,000.
I think there were discussions. But, you know,
Right, and so we didn't know if you approved it, the $900,000 originally, back in 11. We went and looked at the minutes, but the minutes were not, we didn't have enough, we didn't have access to the records at that time. And, please,
My memory of this is that
Good.
Dr. Taylor brought
oops,
them forward to us at a board retreat over at the National, the American Health Institute there, when we're sitting there. And the board was very specific about, before we took on that significant of a commitment, that we pilot the National Equity Project. And, based on assessment of the pilot before we continued forward with the full $1 million. And, he had agreed to that. And shortly before he left, he had accepted from Kellogg the further donation, and that was a bit of a disconnect with the board at that point. Post that, we developed the policy in which the donations over a certain amount needed to come before board approval to prevent that kind of a disconnect in the future between administration and board. That's my memory.
that is correct. That's correct, Dr. Roth.
and then it shifted from being a pilot study altogether to tailor more to Teresa's vision
Before.
of the district.
Before, Teresa took on the position. It was
Well-
shortly before he left, he had done that.
He had done that, yes. No, I'm just clarifying that
Yes.
then what happened was this superintendent came on board and said, this isn't exactly my vision for the district and what we're doing with this group, and then tailored it differently.
That's
for,
correct.
um,
and asked them to go and revisit their original proposal. We
Yeah.
aligned it with the academic plan and with the leadership development.
Right.
And so since then, we have aligned everything under this new transformation plan. And so the dollars, Mr. O'Connor, equals a 900.
Okay.
It's a back way of getting there.
Well, I don't, saying back way makes it sound like it's not open and honest, and you're actually trying to lay it out because you couldn't previously find out where those dollars
Absolutely.
were.
Absolutely.
So I think it's more, that you're trying to be open and clear about what you're taking,
Absolutely.
as we didn't exactly have that.
I could not
Clearly
find
laid
it on
out.
record, that's
Yeah.
correct. And the other thing is, we wanted to make sure that it was the right work. Even though, someone else thought that's the work we should be doing. I did not want to accept money from a donor and it not be the right work.
Any additional questions?
Not about taking the money.
All right, all those in favor of approving the purchasing agenda, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0.
So we'll move on to October financial statements. Those were in your packet. I'm not sure, just getting started in our fiscal year, so there's still kind of working through it. There are a couple things where we received another installment of Act 18 monies. Our state aid started in October, so the revenue side actually looks pretty good at this point. I'm not sure if you have any questions.
Anyone have any questions about the financial statements?
I didn't have any.
All right, very good. On to purchases here.
On the purchasing agenda, and Mr. O'Connor had asked, mentioned, I guess, on the National Equity Project, the first item there, and that one is coming out of BOE funds. That's related to our work with the OCR agreement, therefore is not funded out of grant. We'll find the funding out of our BOE funds. So that's why it's a little bit different and showing there.
And for that one, I would ask Sharon to come up if you have
Okay,
additional
I mean,
questions
if you could explain the.
to explain the
Explain the
difference.
OCR stuff?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And we try to take it out of the first grant.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning,
Morning.
Sharon.
Apparently, the Office for Civil Rights has been in the district for several years, looking at the disproportionality of African-American students in upper-level courses or just in, well, they looked at several different things. They looked at suspension rates and just access to higher-performing schools, et cetera. The district has provided them lots and lots and lots of information. However, they have taken that information and have distilled it down and now are focusing on African-American students' access to AP courses, honors courses, and our schools that have admissions criteria, Zoo, Blandford, the School of Economicology, and City Middle High. They have submitted a settlement agreement to us regarding that, and I believe that was in the packet for you all to see. Did you all receive that settlement agreement?
I don't know.
I don't believe so.
Because you had raised concern about the confidentiality of
Right.
it, and so,
I wanted the board to see
Okay.
it, though.
okay.
But we could get that to you all that has the details.
Did I bring it down or
Hmm?
not? I've got them all made
Do you
out.
have it? Because it's important that the board actually see that document.
Are they in your packet?
I don't think they're in
the packet.
I'll go up. and
We
get
have the
them.
OCR proposal, which is separate from this client services
Yes.
contract.
Right, exactly. You did
packet.
receive that? Okay,
Yeah,
that's
it's in
perfect, because that's what I wanted you all to be able to see
Put it in the packet.
where they're focusing. And as you can see from that proposal, they're asking for a tremendous amount of data. I've dealt with the Office for Civil Rights in my past experiences, and it's a long, arduous journey to satisfy them once they come into your district. And this pattern is pretty consistent with what I had seen in the past. Once they come into the district, and I don't know how they came in, perhaps someone made a complaint, but it's very difficult once they start looking at your data, and especially in a system like ours, for us not to have disproportionality in certain ways. And quite frankly, I suspect after we finish this, there will probably be something more. So I would not say that this is the end of it by any means. But they have specifically asked us to get a consultant to help us analyze our data and to create recommendations for how we provide greater opportunity. Now, they're not requiring that you actually have a quota or that certain amounts of African-American students are in these schools, but they're requiring you to really look at your structures, see what are the barriers, really look at your academic program so that it has the rigor. So, for example, do your middle schools have what they call foundation courses, like, algebra? Do they have higher courses that would allow students to be prepared then to test into a school if you have a test in school? And they're also looking at, so we have a wide array. We have the IB program at City Middle, but do you have comparable numbers of AP classes at other high schools so that everyone doesn't have to go to this one particular high school to get a rigorous education? So they're not saying that you have to open up more slots at City Middle, although that's one way of trying to do it, but they are saying that children shouldn't have to be forced to go to one particular school to get these. So we're analyzing all that, and we really do need help. The National Equity Project was recommended for a couple reasons. One is because they were very much involved in an Office for Civil Rights investigation and really helped the Oakland City School District maneuver its way through that. And also because their whole focus is sort of equity and looking at systems. And they've been in the district, so we weren't going to have to pay for the kind of startup costs that other, a new consultant would have to look at us, they don't know us. And the work that they're doing at Ottawa, which we can kind of piggyback off of from the grant to use some of those resources to help us here so that we can get the price down. So that's what that's all about, and I'm happy to answer more detailed questions about it.
Any additional questions about the OCR money?
Well, I guess I do, but I'm not at all clear on National Equity Project's price structure, because as I look at and this is to step into their
Yeah. Proposal.
the contract, the $300,000 contract, for example.
Oh,
To look at that one. It looks to me like a generous or a low estimate on how much they're billing per hour is $700, and there are a number of these that looks like they're billing more than $1,000 an hour for work. And I guess I'd like somebody, even if they're really charging us $1,000 an hour, I guess I'd like to have some clarity on that. For example, in item number 5 there, they're charging us for 6 half-day sessions and follow-up.
I think this is,
one's
Mr. LeGrand,
bigger.
You're talking
Yeah,
about,
I'm shifting
okay, I'm not
For
as
their
familiar
$300,000,
with
for
that
the
one.
Kellogg-funded thing.
Okay.
That proposal, we've got 6 half-day sessions for 2 people, which means 6 full days. which would be, 48 hours, and then 12 hours more, so 60 hours for which they're charging $42,000, which means it sounds like they're charging $700 an hour, which sounds like, if you were in antitrust litigation, that's a little high for your hourly rate for a lawyer. And then there are, up above, there's 5 sessions, and underneath it says parenthetically 16 hours of total work, and that's 42 grand. So that clocks in at $2,500 an hour. So I'm not sure how those two things track. I mean, if they're, and again, I'm coming into this process late. If they're really charging us $50 an hour, and this got reported out wrong, fine. $50 an hour is about what we pay other consultants. If we're paying these people $1,000 an hour, I'd like to see some,
Even if the money is free, you'd like to see that free money spent.
Yeah,
spent
exactly.
appropriately.
For $1,000 an
Plus, we
hour, I'd
have a
like
lot
to
of
see some,
need, or
Right.
it sounds like we
So if I-
have a lot of work to do, so.
So if I can explain the way the National Equity Project works is, although it's not one consultant, there could be a team of 10 people coming in for this one particular project. And the way the leadership coaches work, it is for it's almost like a course. You see 5 sessions here, but it is almost a full course, and it could be a team of people on the ground. Not sure if you're familiar with kind of like the Cambridge Project. It's not one person or one consultant that you're paying, if that makes sense.
okay, so you're saying their resources thing is badly phrased? Because, that's where I'm going off of. They got one that says, we're getting an associate, not even presumably a partner, for 5 days for 56 grand.
And-
That's $11,000 a day for one guy, is what it looks like.
And there's
Because it is enumerated out on here, 2 senior associates on some, 1 associate. So to me, even if it's a team, it sounds like you're only getting 1 person, where on some of it says you're getting.
but not for the project, right? There may be 2 people that will come in,
Right.
but you have the team of people.
Right, I can understand, I can appreciate that, I guess, but I think to Mr. Legrand's point is, if
We-
you're having a session and only 1 person's coming in, even if there's work done on the back end someplace else, to me, it still points to, we're paying for 16 hours of service for 1 associate to be the person that comes in, so on the number 2, it's 16 hours at $42,000 an hour, that's $2,500 an
point
hour for 2
person.
people, so that's still $1,250 an hour for 2 people.
And it would be the point person. We can get more information to break it down on who's actually attached to a project,
That would be useful.
right? We can do that.
Yeah, in law firms, you think billable hours, right?
Yep.
So if there's 200
Okay.
billable hours back in California developing this project, fine, then that makes sense.
Right.
But,
Billables.
if we're getting the same curriculum everyone in the country.
You're
is
not.
getting, and they developed it 5 years ago, and they're sending somebody out to give us a PowerPoint, and they're charging 42 grand,
Yeah.
that's not so great, so.
No, we can have them break it out so that it shows specifically who we're getting and what we're getting. We can do
And
that.
what sort of support? Sounds like they plan on doing within a school building as well. It sounds like what you're saying is that not only will they be doing this presentation, but then the ongoing projects, people are going to have mentors or to a certain.
Right, it's actually the teaching and learning and coaching piece. Mhm. But we can definitely break that out. And then for the Office of Civil Rights, their the pricing looks totally different. It's because we've negotiated this down by about $50,000 or more.
Okay, so national equity is going to satisfy this need for the consultant with the OCR business, is that, just to be clear? And then 4, 5, 6 years ago, there was some change in regard to
That's right.
application process to make it seem less selective at these schools where there are applications. Have they taken that into account? Are they still feeling that that is
That is not enough.
inadequate?
They
Okay.
did take that into account, and we did change about 6 years ago the process. What we didn't change, though, is how do we help children get there?
Yeah. That's huge, and I think
Right.
that it's wonderful.
So that's,
that
it's the
we're-
building,
It's all part
building
of
the
our
structure.
transformation plan
Absolutely.
anyway.
And it
so-
is absolutely, Dr.
Mhm.
Randalls, it was something that we said we were going to do anyway. We were
Right.
looking at dual enrollment, and
Mhm.
we've added courses to the schools, but it was,
Right. At elementary school, are these kids to have enough access to be prepared to make it to
Absolutely.
sixth
That's
grade
exactly
or
right.
above? So that's awesome. There's nothing wrong with that. The other piece, the stuff we're doing at Innovation High. I mean, now we're adding
Absolutely.
more AP courses.
That's
and,
right.
You know, really integrating some more of that. So, but we do need to
That's
make
correct.
everything else more robust.
that's
So,
right.
That's awesome.
And then OCR was in the district for about 10 years, actually. It was about 10 years that they were in the district on a regular basis around second language students and access.
And that has been resolved, or
It
no?
has been
Oh, good.
resolved, but it took us about 10 years to resolve it. So to Sharon's point, they were with us a long time.
Any other additional questions about OCR? Continuing on through the purchasing agenda, is there any other questions about any of the other items that are included in there?
I say, I might just mention, we have a lot of technology purchases, and a lot of that is funded through the USF E-rate program. 2 years ago, the 2011, the federal government had a lawsuit, and a lot of the reimbursement money has been held up, which all of a sudden this fall has started to come forth. And so that's how we're now able to do all of these large projects. We've gotten, if you may have noticed on the financial statements, the other local revenue is significantly above budget because we've kind of withheld that budget, not knowing when they were going to resolve their issues and release the money, so.
Can you
it's been-
define just USF, or
Pardon?
can you define USF just so?
Universal Service Funds, it's a program set up on your, like on your phone bills, you probably see an E-rate thing, it goes into the School and Libraries Corporation, and they administer the program. So then we submit applications to help fund technology. Primarily, we use it for the big infrastructure type things that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do. I think you'll see some of these are very large ticket dollar items, and where we are in the funding level is about in the upper 80s, about 90%. So we can go in and do a large project, but only have to pay for a small percentage of it. But that's why all of a sudden you're seeing this is because the money's actually started to flow again, and we've got a couple years of previous year
Oh,
money that
wow.
we hadn't had in before, so.
So this
Kind of
isn't
been-
sequestration blocks. This is 2 years waiting for.
Right, and what Craig had detailed to me is that some of the larger companies didn't like to have to pay in anymore. So they were trying to get out of having to pay their portion of it. So it's been settled, the money is now coming, so we're going back into doing some of these bigger projects.
Questions about any of the E-rate projects? Ken, would you mind going over the sinking fund expenditure real quick?
That's for temperature controls at City High, the old Creston building. And if you remember at the previous Finance Committee, I asked for permission to take that quote directly to the purchasing agenda on November 18th board meeting. The bids came in, there was a significant difference between the low bid and the second bid. And doing our post-bid analysis and interviews, we needed more time to make sure everything was covered. That's why you'll see it here. In fact, we have asked for a larger contingency, just because of the gap. The bidder has answered every question with the correct answer.
The low bidder, you're
A
saying?
little bit, I mean, we're talking $140,000 difference between
Wow.
number one and two. So we were trying to make sure that there wasn't something that they missed that we'd be fighting with. We did bid this in a unique way. If you remember, about 2 years ago, we replaced some, I believe, 2 of the heating controllers at the Creston building. And there was a question, could we still use those? Well, we bid it, one option was for that vendor to bid the rest of the building. That bid came in number 3. We also bid it to add to that system, but make sure that all the components talk to each other and work compatibly. For two bidders, that was lower, and then the third option was replace the whole system, but we take those relatively new controllers and we can use them elsewhere. The low bidder, their bid was cheaper or less expensive, lower, to replace the whole system. So we did a fair amount of homework. We're satisfied. It does make you a little nervous that there's that much disparity, but we're going to move ahead. We're recommending to move ahead with that bidder.
And this bidder has a history of working with GRPS, and
They all have had some history with us.
all right, any additional questions about the purchasing items? Is there a motion to approve the purchasing items?
So moved.
Support?
All right, those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Rhonda, for the future, I started talking to Julie about this before she departed. We need to move the purchasing agenda items to action items instead of, because if they're going to be put into the consent agenda, if no action's been taken on, they shouldn't just be
Okay,
consented through if there's been no action from the
okay.
lower committee. Right. Thank you. All right, warm, safe, dry update.
The list you see in your packet, we're really, for the most part, we're wrapping up some of our fall projects. It's cleaning up the contracts on the roof work. The mason repair at Central High School is weather dependent, so that will, probably a majority will carry over into the springtime. And then the City High EMS controls are on there. We do have a few pieces at stocking to finish up. Not all of the bathroom wall tile arrived last summer. We painted the walls and made them functional, but we'll go in at holiday break and finish that up. The other thing that we'll be doing is we've finished our fall inspections. We're reviewing the entire project list, and as we do twice a year, we'll be bringing that back to this committee and then the board with our recommendations. We'll look at the priorities, additional projects, and also the budgets that are attached. It's our goal to get that to the December meeting, but depending on how much work there is, it may lag till January. But one of those months, that will come back.
Any questions about the warm, safe, dry? All right, anything else you guys have? That being said, meeting adjourned. Thank you.